Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurtzbacher, and today we're going to talk about a new category of end-to-end backpacking type trips. You're probably familiar with thru hiking, which is an end-to-end backpacking trip on a long distance trail such as the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail. Then you have bike packing, which is a long distance trip on a bike. Today's guest shares a new and unique way of long distance adventuring called thru-skateboarding. Moondog Roop from Madrid, New Mexico is with us today. And only a few years after deciding to take up skateboarding as an adult at age 33, Moondog decided to take on his first end-to-end long-distance trail, the 800-mile Florida Trail. He would hike much of it, but whenever he could and the road permitted, he would ride his skateboard. Since then, he's completed several more skating adventures. And by helping to grow a new category, Moondog shows us that we all get to adventure our own way. And I am so excited to share his story. Moondog, welcome to the campfire.
Hey, thanks for having me. That was a heck of an intro. Thank you.
Man, I'm so excited. You are an adventurer, but your journeys have this cool, unique spin. So rather than long distance hiking, you bring your skateboard with you. What is thru skating? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So, if you're familiar with through hiking, it is essentially a lot of the same concepts of through hiking. Like you're just trying to go long distances. I
Yeah.
just happen to bring a skateboard with me. There are trips in which I am carrying the skateboard more than I'm skating. So, like I'll be hiking a trail and then I'll do the road sections. And then there are trips in which I am skating almost the whole time, and then hiking is the minimal part of it.
Aside from the fact that you're like literally on a skateboard, I mean, that's just part of what you're doing. I guess the big question is why? Why bring the skateboard with you?
I was just kind of fun, to be honest. Whenever you're hiking, like I love hiking, but you're basically just hiking. And so whenever I bring this skateboard, if I hit a road section, I just put the board down and it's like I'm just starting something new. If I get tired skating, I can pick up the board and start hiking. And it's just, it adds like 20, 30% more fun.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I mean, I do think about parts where like, I mean, even like the Appalachian Trail, which I haven't done yet, but I know there's sections where like you get off and you've got you've got longer distances of road. Like how convenient to be able to hop on a skateboard and just,
Right. Yeah.
the time goes faster, right?
It adds a whole lot of, kinda like availability to towns, and so, like, if you have to hike 8 miles into a town to do a resupply, that could take you hours, but, with the skateboard, you could generally do that in about an hour, and then you're just kind of in town goofing off.
Yeah. And like how much extra weight does that create for you?
It depends on the type of board that I bring. If I bring just kind of like the regular popsicle stick style board, then it adds about 6 pounds. If I bring a long board, I think it's something like 9, 10 pounds.
And how does that kind of impact the whole overall experience for you?
It kind of depends what you're doing. If you're skating, it's awesome. There was like days on the Florida Trail where I had to carry the board, I think for 4 days straight. And outside of being a skateboard, it has no other purpose. And so you're just carrying this heavy piece of gear. And I do ultralight. And so,
Yeah.
it's my pack is 10 pounds and below. And then if you add 6 pounds to that, that has no utility, then it is not as much fun, but it still makes it worth it to have it.
If you go on a Google and put in through skateboarding, like you're the first thing that comes up. Like, is this a brand new category or is there a community of through skaters?
There's a community, but it is quite small.
Yeah.
Kind of like that joke from Arrested Development. There's dozens of us, right? And we all basically know each other, and even like throughout the world. I know guys in Singapore, New Zealand, Australia that all do this, but it's been going on for probably about like 10 or 15 years. And there's a guy, Paul Kent, that him and a bunch of friends did it well over 10 years ago. And it's just now like starting to like kind of get more attention and people are doing it more.
Yeah, I mean, it's novel, it's fun, it's sort of creative, and it kind of allows you to put sort of your own unique stamp on it.
It is, yeah. It makes for great conversations too because people don't see it very often. Like they're generally aware of hikers if you're in a hiker town, but if you come through on a skateboard, like they're always interested in what you're doing, and then that always spurs something off. Like we're having dinner with people, or even like spending the night with them, basically from just meeting them on the street.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's kind of fun if you think about like what is that like when you kind of cruise into a town and you have like your gear on as though you're a hiker, but you're riding on a board. Like, what kind of questions do people ask? Like, what kind of surprised looks and glances do you get?
It happens pretty frequently, more frequently you think. People would be like, "Are you all skateboarding?" And we're on the skateboard. Right? It's like, well, obviously we are.
Yeah.
And so, we get that, question pretty frequently. Also, they just say, like, "What are you doing?" And then, we'll stop and kind of explain it.
Yeah. You've done a handful of pretty awesome experiences. Can you kind of talk us through just some of the through skating adventures you've taken?
Yeah, so the first one that I did was the Florida Trail, and this is really how I got into through skating.
Yeah.
Was I had read about a guy that had done it in 2018, and at the time I actually didn't know how to skateboard, and so that was the dream is skateboard the Florida Trail, and I did that, and then right about the time I was finishing that, I met this guy Justin Bright, who was longboarding the entire state of Florida. He did like 1,100 miles on his board. And we got introduced to each other, ended up meeting up at this hiker meetup. And like the first night we met, we were like, we should do something together. And then just a few weeks later, we met in New Mexico and skated the whole length of the state from the Mexico border up to the Colorado border. Then about a year later, we skated the Natchez Trace together, the parkway. Then from there, I went on solo to skate in Puerto Rico, the entire circumference of the island.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
By far, New Mexico. There was something just, him and I really didn't know each other that well. And we just kind of like took this leap of faith that we were going to kind of do this trip the way in which we both kind of skated, that we'd both be able to keep up and that we'd get along well. Like we didn't know hardly anything about each other and we ended up having the most amazing time. Like it's hard to put in words. It was just kind of like every day was like a once in a lifetime kind of trip. Actually, the town I live in now, Madrid, came from that trip. And we just skated through. And then just 3 months later, I ended up moving there.
You loved it that much?
Yeah, it's a blast. It's a little town out in the middle of nowhere, and, we're a little bit, south of Santa Fe. We have, like, maybe a quarter mile of paved road, everything else is dirt roads, and, everybody just kinda lives like it's the Wild West.
Let's look at the New Mexico adventure. I mean, you're skating the length of the state. How much hiking are you doing and how much skating are you doing on that trip?
So we did almost entirely the whole thing skating. Hiking was only for fun. So if we went by a trailhead, we would end up hiking it. We actually met this one guy as we were skating by his house. Like his door swung open and he yelled out, he's like, "Do you all like weed?" And we just immediately stopped, right? We are like, look at us. Of course we do. And so we spoke with this guy, and then like 15 minutes later, he ended up bringing us to a trailhead, and we hiked through these slot canyons. It was beautiful, and so that's kind of like the adventurous side of it. Like you just meet people, and they're just immediately interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, it's so wild. I mean, I think about like the Appalachian Trail. I mean, you're mostly in the forest, walking on trail, stepping over roots and rocks and all of this. This is like this, it's kind of this hybrid where I'm sure you had some of that, but you're in not urban environments, but you're out on paved roads. Like, what's the sleeping situation when you're through skating?
So it kind of depends on where we're at, but generally we're sleeping in a tent or
Mhm.
we'll cowboy camp. It's almost always stealth camping. Very rarely do we actually stay in any kind of campsite because you're just kind of out in the middle of wherever. We've actually slept in arroyos, we've slept under bridges. You find whatever you can find.
Stealth camping. I like that. That's a
Yeah. It's kind of the way to go because you just skate or hike to get tired, set up, and we practice leave no trace principles. So in the morning when we're leaving, hopefully you can't tell at all that we were there. And yeah, we just go until we get tired. Sun
yeah,
starts going down.
so fun. You got into skating later in life.
I did.
Yeah, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I had a buddy that had a kid, and me and this buddy we grew up together, and he skateboarded the whole time that we were children, and so I knew when he had this kid that I wanted to learn to skate so that we could do it as an activity as he was growing up. So yeah, actually, on my 33rd birthday, I had a friend that gave me a skateboard deck, so I went down to a skate shop, had it set up. I was meeting another friend and I had to walk the skateboard to the coffee shop, which, like, was humiliating, right? Like, and of course, it's your first day, you don't know
Yeah.
how to do something, but I felt like the biggest loser just walking that thing down there. So, yeah, I started picking it up and, from there, just kinda kept practicing. Around that time, the COVID shutdown happened,
Mhm.
and there were no cars on the street, nobody was out, and so I would just go out every day and just, kinda learn how to skate, and it ended up being, quite beneficial for learning.
Yeah, so you said that your motivation was your friend had a kid and you wanted to be able to participate with your friend's kid in this activity.
Yeah.
Why skateboarding? You could have chosen, you could have chosen anything. Why skateboarding?
I think part of it had to do with that I read about this guy, that had thru skated the Florida Trail.
Yeah.
But also, it was something that as a kid, I was just terrified of. Like, I wanted to know how to do it, but I was scared of falling. And, once you hit your 30s, you're like, maybe it's time I start to get over some of these things. And I really started to analyze like how I was not really like growing in my life in certain ways. It didn't even have to be in skateboarding, but I needed to get over these things I was fearful of. And skateboarding is as much fun as it looks. And from the outside, it looked to be as much fun. And so I just wanted to have fun with them.
Hey everyone, it's Scott here. This podcast is a passion project for me because I absolutely love adventure. And it's thanks to the effort of my residential real estate team here in Charlotte, North Carolina, that many of you know as the W Realty Group, that this podcast gets funded. This awesome group of people have unmatched levels of competence and caring for our clients. If you know of anyone looking to buy or sell a home, our team serves the Charlotte, North Carolina market, but we can also help you find an agent anywhere throughout the US or Canada through our highly connected network. When you support our real estate business, you are also supporting this podcast. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your referrals. Yeah, so it's so interesting. I mean, age 33, like you mentioned having this sort of thought that you've got some fears you want to get over.
Right. I feel like I lived a pretty good amount of my life where I was kind of pretending to be somebody that I wasn't and not being really truthful about who I was. Or, like you go to work, you have to give like the more prim and proper kind of presentation of yourself. But I was kind of doing that throughout my whole life. And so, yeah, as I started getting probably about like 28 to 30, I started realizing that I'm kind of not living up to who I want to be.
I love this. And so you literally saw like the skateboard as this sort of tool that you could use to essentially find that you knew you were that was hiding inside.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just kind of like, you just have to get over this. Like, it would be such a shame to be like 80 years old and be like, I wish I took up skateboarding or anything really. Like, to have that kind of regret, but then you're, too old to do it.
That beautiful explanation that you just gave, now like flash forward several years and some of these adventures that you've taken, like what does the symbol of the skateboard mean to you at this point?
Oh man. I would say like kind of like just the sense of adventure. I really like the idea. of recognizing that your time is limited, right?
Mm.
And so we actually kind of talked about this on the phone. I'm getting ready to go on 10 years sober. But when I was drinking, I was like, I recognized I had a problem. And I was like, you're not going to make it past 50. And so in my head, I was like, at some point, 50 years old, that's the best you can hope for. And then after I got sober, I kind of jokingly like said, like, oh, it's probably 56 now. And then I had this thought of like, just keep it at 50. And because now you have to realize that you have a limited amount of time and you just have to go do these things and don't get caught up in the things of day to day life and just go and do them. And so the skateboard's kind of the instrument in which I could do that now, where I'll be tinkering around with ideas. And then I'm 37 now, and I can notice that my body's getting a little bit slower when it comes to like recovery
Yeah.
and just in general. And so it kind of makes me realize like you have to do this now.
Oh my gosh, there's Moondog, so much to unpack in what you just said. And so I want to hit a couple of things. Like when I asked about the skateboard and why, the first thing you said was like that you knew there was this guy that had through skated the Florida Trail. When you picked up the skateboard, having like, at age 33, starting this new skill, you already had in the back of the mind through skating. So this wasn't like to pick up a skateboard to go do half pipes and be Tony Hawk. It was like you knew you wanted to do long distance skating from the beginning.
I did, yeah. Actually, like right after I had read the article about this guy, I was hiking in South Carolina somewhere, and like the whole hike, I was out there for days. All I could think about is how this dude brought a skateboard. And like I'd be listening to music and just thinking about this guy. It just like really, there was just like this thread that always kind of attached me to the idea. And, so yeah, it was always just part of the dream, and then I had, like, a good opportunity, once my buddy had the kid to, pick it up and just get over that fear.
Yeah. What was upbringing like for you, and sort of how did you develop this inner voice that ultimately called you to these big adventures?
Growing up, like, I was, in Boy Scouts, and actually, we had a fantastic troop, like, they taught us so many skill sets, hiking, backpacking, kayaking, all these things, and so that really kind of, like, instilled the outdoors in me. And then like just years later, kind of that inner voice was just kind of figuring out that I wasn't exactly who I wanted to be.
Mhm.
And I worked in the medical profession, and there you have to, have like be very, kind of like I said, prim and proper. You have to be very professional. And I was realizing that I was curbing a lot of how I felt about things, how I talked to people, how I said things. And so it was just a point where I was just like, this doesn't feel like the best version of me. And then that kind of pushed through.
Yeah, so you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, and we had some good conversation. And when we spoke, you talked about how like reflection on life transitions has been really meaningful and helpful for you. And I'm kind of curious. You also mentioned coming up on 10 years sober. I'm curious if like this skateboarding experience, like how it's factored into like your overall experience, the recovery, and this idea of like life transitions.
Like if we took it back to like getting sober, like the day that was the last day that I drank, probably one of the worst days of my life.
Mm,
Right. And, nobody gets sober on a good day. Like it's awful. But kind of what I learned from that is that your worst aspects in life, your worst times in life, if you utilize it correctly and you take advantage of that, it will become the best thing that you can do. And so, like, bad will generally become good.
mm.
And kind of the, very much the same concept in skating is you're gonna fall down a whole bunch. You're gonna get hurt. Things are, statistically, things are probably gonna get broken. But if you're not ever falling down, you're not actually getting better at anything. And so you can't actually turn that bad into good.
Yeah. So when you talk about transitions, like, have you like experienced like other transitions that you've reflected on? Again, going back to that conversation that you and I had.
So getting sober was the biggest catalyst,
Yeah.
right? It allowed me to take control of my life and control of my actions. Down the line, I would say things like I decided to start living in a van out in the desert. That was a big change in my life. Actually, I was living in a van out in Colorado. That taught me a lot about minimalism and just kind of collecting experience more than just things.
Yeah.
From there, leaving my, profession, was a big one. I really loved the profession, but I was not happy in it, if that makes sense. And so deciding that, like, it's kind of worth the struggle. If you struggle in life doing something that you want to do and having control of your life, it's better than not struggling as much, but you're struggling in a different way. You're picking which pain you wanna have, right? Then about a little over 2 years ago, I ended up, getting a really bad concussion
Mm.
and, while skating, but, I had a concussion and I had amnesia, and I forgot all this information about my life, and, that was one where I had to be a lot of people had to, like, watch over me, for, like, the first few days, and I sat there just kind of inside my own head, completely miserable. And I started to kind of analyze my life and or analyze more the philosophies of life. And from there, I was just like, it could take like one minor little slip on a skateboard to ruin everything. So I had to kind of go forward and just be like, go after the things you want, because there could literally be a moment where it's just all taken away from you and you have no idea what you're doing. Like I was just on the telephone, skateboarding in a parking lot, and then the next thing I can't remember anything.
Wow. Like, how long did that last? What was that recovery like?
So the first couple of days were by far the worst. Like I struggled to remember any of the details, and I want to give a big shout out to my friend Emma and to Raya as well, who were the ones that helped me. But Emma made a two pieces of paper that had all these major details about my life on it. And it kind of explained that I had amnesia. And so I would just read these papers over and over.
Wow.
For about the first week, I slowly started to get information back. Like it just slowly kind of feeds back into your brain. And then it took about 4 weeks total for me to get back. I'm not still not 100%, but I'm probably like 97%. And so, there's like little bits of information that I forget here and there. But it took about a month to get back to kind of where I'm at now.
Wow. And you talked about like the idea that some of these things, the worst becomes the best. And I'm wondering if like has that sort of has that become clear to you yet in that experience?
It has, yeah. I'm actually quite positive about that experience. I have to be more focused now. Like I can't hold as much inside my
Mm.
brain. Like I'll forget things, and so I write things down a whole lot more now. Like I have actually right beside of me got a notebook that I keep everything in. So I'm constantly writing things down. I had to get more into routines, and so it ended up helping me become kind of the person that I wanted to be a little bit more, where I had to be more structured. It's easy to fall into being, just a blase stoner. And so, but whenever you have those things kind of taken away from you, you're like, okay, I have to figure it out, or I'll be just that.
You brought up a bunch of different transitions that have happened throughout your life. You talked about like enjoying like the reflection and kind of coming up with like sort of the meaning. I'm curious if there's like a common thread that you've noticed between these transitions that you've experienced.
Probably just the philosophy that negative things can become the best things that happen to you. If you don't take something negative that's happening and turn it around, it'll just always be a negative. But if you recognize like the thing that got me sober is I was like, number one, this is clearly my fault. I couldn't blame it on other things,
Yeah.
but also this feeling is so awful that I can't go back to that. Same thing with work, like the profession that I was in, the people that I worked for, there was just something that I just felt like it was chipping away at my soul. And I was just like, I can't continue to feel like this. And so, yeah, just that thread of like recognizing what's bad, figuring out a plan to correct it, and then going from there.
I love that so much. It's like this inner what I'm sensing is something that says I can be better. And then taking action to do it.
Right. Yeah. I just got quite sick about 3 months ago that it was pretty devastating to my health in a way. And so I'm trying to just like use that. And I think that's where you get better at this is like you when you're in that bad moment being like this can be something that turns around really really great for me. And so like I use the bad health to try to now push it so that I'm getting healthier than I was.
So let's talk about your trail name because I read that your trail name is kind of you started using it full time as one of your life's transitions. Can you tell us about how that name came to be and in that time period when you decided to start using it full time?
Absolutely. So that actually goes back to the time I had amnesia. And so the day after it happened, like it's hard to explain to people, but there's just no information in your head, right? Like you have kind of an idea about some things, but not really. And then because you're not really sure about things, you get very confused about the things you think you know. And so one of the things I wasn't sure about was what my actual name was,
Oh
right?
wow.
And my birth name is David. And actually, I quite love the name David. So I don't mind if people call me David or anything like that. But I'm sitting there. There's a guy, actually, the whole, I'm going to give him a shout out as well. The Pomeroy family out of Lafayette, Colorado. They were the ones that watched over me while I was going through this, and it literally just kind of took me in. It was quite amazing. They're great people. But Bill kept telling people that my name was Judy, and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not, but let's not mix wires, right? But it was a great prank, just not in the
Yeah.
moment, right? But, like, as I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about my name, I couldn't remember David. I was pretty sure it wasn't Judy, but I could remember that my trail name was Moondog and that my friends all called me Moondog. And so then maybe like a week later, as I was kind of thinking about, me sitting in that chair just trying to figure out names and figure out information, I was like, it seems to be more fitting that, like, I just kind of liked Moondog better. And I just like the people that call me Moondog. I respect them so much.
Yeah.
Or that where that name came from is the trail name. I love all those people. And so it just felt great. Like I was just like, just lean into it. And like, outside society is probably or society is probably going to look at it as a little weird, but it would probably be better to look at it people looking at you as if it's weird than to not feel as if I'm kind of the person that I wanted to be.
I love that so much because you said a little bit earlier in this conversation that you weren't really happy with the person that you were becoming and you wanted to become this new person. Then you literally get amnesia and you're given this like opportunity to forget all of
Right.
that stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're like, I mean, it's almost like a rebirth, right? And now you're back and now you're Moondog and you're total badass and living the dream life.
Yeah, it really was just kind of a critical moment. Like those first couple of days were so scary
Yeah.
that I was just like, there's a reason that I could remember Moondog, but I couldn't remember David. Once I started getting back into normal life, I was just like, I just lean into it.
So is Moondog the person that you wanna be?
Oh, definitely. There's things about myself that I'm still working on, but like I feel so much more like the person that I truly am. I try to never really hide who I am and, try to put that forward in like a kind effort.
Man, I love it so much. I got a for people that can't see me, I got a big smile on my face right now. I'm just loving this conversation. So Moondog, what's the origin of the name itself?
So it actually came from a movie called The Beach Bum. And some people will love this movie, some people may hate it, but it became a trail name. Some people were actually trying to give me a really awful trail name. They're trying to call me Skater Boy.
Okay.
And, also being 35 and being called boy was probably not a great way to go about it. But a buddy was like, you need to change this. And so his fiance, it was her birthday, and she wanted to pick my trail name for her birthday. And one of the suggestions that had come up is I had an ex girlfriend that used to call me Moondog because she thought I was a lot like this character in this movie. And, I was just like, I have this one ex that calls me this, and we had come up with all these different names, and that was the one that she liked the best, and so she picked that one, which was a lot of, faith to put in somebody because you're pretty much stuck with the trail name once you get it.
Yeah. Had you seen the movie? Were you familiar with the movie when you got the name?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Actually, I quite love the movie, and it is I would say that I am quite a lot like this character, and so it is quite fitting.
I love it. I've not seen it. I'm gonna have to go check out The Beach Bum.
Don't watch it with your kids.
Okay. Fair.
But
Fair.
yeah, it just a good night, alone with, like you and your wife, just, play it, make sure the kids aren't there.
Okay, fair. I love it. So another thing that we spoke about on the phone the other day, you have a very unique philosophy around adventure and kind of just the way you think about it. And you actually brought up Marie Kondo and her book, The Magic of Tidying. I just wonder if we could dig into your philosophy a little bit.
Kinda like we were talking about with minimalism,
Mhm.
like, there are so many benefits to just having less. And number 1, you just have to keep up with less, but also it allows for you to, like, go and travel more, do all these things. Number 1, you're not spending money on things you don't need. But even like the amount that you carry in your pack, you can go lighter. You really kind of figure out about yourself, like what is essential versus what is luxury. And then you really dial in, like, what are the luxuries that I really like? Like, this is a little gross, but one of the things I've figured out about myself is I really like to be able to sit down to use the restroom. And it like took like, 1,000 miles of hiking and squatting to realize that, man,
The
I
simple pleasures.
simple pleasures. And
Yeah.
then like when you're sitting on a toilet, you're like, "This is great." Where if it's like part of your day-to-day life, then you don't appreciate as much. Even like with food, like if you really like when you're hiking, you get
Yeah.
into town, food just tastes better. You appreciate it more. And I think that's the thing is like take away things from your life so that way whenever you actually have them, you do actually appreciate it.
So the Marie Kondo thing is about surrounding yourself with the things that really bring you joy, and essentially getting rid of all the other stuff, the other noise.
Exactly. Yeah, get rid of the noise. She has this thing, and I don't necessarily subscribe to this, but I think you could put it in a framework in which it works for just about everybody. But she says, hold it in your hand and see if it brings you joy.
Yeah.
I think looking at it's good enough, but like I think about the things that I own, and I'm like, have I used this very much? Am I just like kind of lugging it around? Things like that. Yeah, find out what gives you joy. Like they say money doesn't buy happiness. It also does buy backpacks and, sleeping bags and the things or like whatever your hobby is, you have to really dial it in. Be conservative financially in the ways in which you need to be. And then, when it comes to your hobbies, just let loose.
The skateboard brings you joy.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm curious what it was like for you to take up a new skill. You said on the phone later in life. I feel like, you you got a long way.
Subjective.
You're a long way to go. Yeah. But what is it like to take up a new skill like skateboarding well into adulthood?
It's definitely tougher, whenever you are, kind of older to take up skateboarding. Older is relative, right? A lot of the people that take up skateboarding are like 10 to 20 years old, right? If you looked at the Olympics, the skateboarding Olympics, they were all like 15 and they're the best in the world. So coming in as like somebody in their 30s, I definitely stood out. And it was a little bit tougher. Like if I fell, I was gonna lay there a little bit more, and it was gonna take me longer to recover. But it is still worth it, right? Like there's I can't remember the name, but there was some guy that like took up biking and ended up winning, I think, the Tour de France at like age 41, and he was in the best shape of his life. And I think like maybe that won't apply to all of us. Like I'm not going to be in the Olympics next year or in the next few years in my upper 30s competing with 15-year-olds, but you could take up these skill sets and like take up these hobbies and really apply it to your life, even when you think it's too late.
Did you ever feel like were there any people that, let's say, ridiculed or said, like, "What are you doing?"
Not really. I think like if I was around, like 15-year-old kids that were skateboarding, I would definitely feel more self-conscious, but I don't think that they were, like, ever really saying anything. I think that was it within me. Probably the only time I've been offended about skateboarding is there's a thing on Instagram called Old Man Skate Shesh, and they started reposting some of my stuff, and I never really looked at it until like a year later. And it's all like older people skating. And like that was the first time where I was like, I don't really think I'm that old. Like I look young too. And so that felt a little insulting.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can imagine. So, I'm curious, like, what's next for you? You just did this, trip around Puerto Rico. That sounded like that was pretty awesome. Like, what's the future look like for Moondog?
So right now I'm really actually trying to get into trail running.
Mm,
I haven't fully decided which I want to do, but I want to try to set an FKT, a fastest known time on the trail.
cool.
Right now, I'm just training it, really dialing in my gear, getting physicality up to where it needs to be to do something like that.
Very cool. I'm excited. Well, I want to get your take for like for listeners that are hearing your story and kind of wrapping their heads around sort of this idea of transitions and how, things that are seemingly bad can turn into good. And then like your experience of literally forgetting everything and then coming back as a new person. Like what advice do you have for people that maybe don't see that light yet? Maybe they're going through something difficult, but you've kind of got this foresight and this unique philosophy about difficult experiences. What advice do you have?
I'm going to answer that in a really roundabout way.
Cool.
So I'm not religious, but even if I were, I would not subscribe to the idea of a heaven or hell because I love this idea that you get one shot and that shot ends at a time that like you're completely surprised by it, right? And so you have to like kind of live life. Like it sounds so cheesy, but so few people do it. Just like live as if it could all end tomorrow. It could all end within the next 5 minutes. You never know. And keep that in your mind. Like have a healthy perception of death, have a healthy perception of life and your health, but really go after things as if time is limited because it really is, and you need to keep that in the forefront of your mind in a healthy way. Like don't spiral down that course, but just start now, make a plan and go after it. I heard it on this podcast, somebody was saying like you need to slow down on trail because there are people that are sitting in an office wishing that they could do what you're doing, and you want to be the person that's out on trail or out doing whatever they want to do, however ridiculous it may seem. Just go out and do it so that you could be the person that's out there doing it and learn which ways you want to suffer. Like, do you want to suffer so you can, in certain ways, so you could do that, or do you want to suffer inside of your office? And they don't write books or make movies about people that just sit inside of an office all day.
No, they don't.
They
And
just
we're gonna get to that question. Moondog, if people want to learn more about you, get in touch, or even support your adventures, what's the best way for them to do that?
so I'm basically just on Instagram, and it's just Moondog Roop, and yeah, look me up there. I'm not great about posting, but I try to do it every once in a while.
Yeah, I love it so much. So you just alluded to this, like Hollywood doesn't make movies about people that just sit in the office all day. They make movies about people like you that take up through skating and go on epic adventures and cross New Mexico and cross Florida, and they do all these things. And they're gonna make a movie about you at some point, Moondog. And I want to know, when they do, who's going to be the actor or actress that's going to play you in that movie?
All right, so I knew that this question was coming, and I have a friend that I hike with. His trail name is Flush. And I said to myself that no matter what he said, I was going to say this. But one of his favorite hobbies is making fun of me. Okay. And we have a great back and forth. So his answer to this question was Jason Momoa after doing a year of crack.
Okay. I love
You
it.
know what? I think he could do it.
I
So,
mean, that actually could work. I could see that.
right.
Hey, Christian Bale ate an apple a day to get down to the weight that he was at for that movie, The Machinist, that he did. So, like, maybe Jason Momoa. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't go there.
No, yeah. Maybe like a beer a day, and then yeah.
There you
It
go. I
will,
love it.
yeah.
Okay, and what's your movie going to be called?
Actually, I think it should be a trilogy.
Whoa.
Not to sound too presumptuous, but Hit by a Car, the Moondog story.
Whoa! Hit by a Car: The Moondog Story, starring Jason Momoa.
After
I
some
love
health problems.
I love it. Man, this was such a fun conversation. I love your philosophy on life. I love your energy and your enthusiasm. And I really appreciate you sharing some of your time with us today. For those that are listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope Moondog Story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Moondog, thank you so much for being here.
My man, thanks for having me.